everybody. We got a big crowd tonight, so we're going to give you about a minute to roll in. Tonight is super fun. If you're used to being on our webinars and seeing Matt and I, you see we have so many more people on tonight. So this is going to be great. You actually are going to be able to hear from a lot of people on our team. So, there's a lot of people that make happen what Matt and I do with our educating and our experts. So you get to meet some people tonight. So just a little bit of housekeeping. As people know that have been on these before, we love questions. Please put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. I'm going to put up a poll in a second and you can answer that, but we'll remind you if you're putting stuff in the chat because it's just better for us to watch one place. Also, you can be anonymous in Q&A if you choose to when you're asking a question. And yes, we will be sending out the recording and the slides tomorrow. That's always a big concern / question. So we will be doing that tomorrow. And
just to piggyback on that, I mean, we're coming out with a show of force tonight, right? Peg and I are sick of being so overwhelmed in terms of like the crowd and having no chance to answer all the questions. So
speak for yourself. I'm not overwhelmed.
That is true. That is true. Well, we're not all built like you, Peggy. So we brought out the big guns here to make sure that again, all hands on deck. But I mean, a point of tonight, I think it's going to be an entertaining next hour or so here, and I think people are showing up for different things, right? I know a lot of people want to know how these FAFSA changes are going to affect their family. I know a lot of questions right now are starting to think about, do we go ED? Do we not go ED? Should we send our test scores? Should we not? What do we need to be thinking about with the essay that my kid's just starting? So I think, and of course, the affordability of this whole thing. Certainly, we're going to hit on all of those. Everyone I just mentioned are kind of right down the pike for us. And then we also want to make sure that people understand how can they leverage us, right? How can they work with us? Because there's a variety of different ways that we work with folks. And we want to be completely transparent about the fact that we're going up in prices in a few days here. And we'll do that again. I'll talk a little bit about the rationale as to why we have these seasonal prices, but we want to make sure that people that were kind of thinking about working with us, that they understand that, now's the time to make sure that they get in at the best possible time. And again, in addition to meeting some other folks here, because Peg and I and a bunch of us here are oftentimes front of the room, but we're able to do what we're able to do because we have so much support and such a team to rely on and collaborate with and all of that. So we want to make sure that you guys get exposure to everybody, right? Because if you work with us, whether that's somebody that just books an hour or works, or via the Wake Me Up When It's Over package that we take over this whole process for you, you're working with one individual, but really that individual is supported by this whole group right here. And we're able to tap into each other's expertise and experience and again, collaborate. And that's kind of how I think that's what enables us to be as good as we are, what we do, or at least as good as I think we are. So go ahead, Biggie. You can go ahead and put that poll up there. We'll do a quick intro and get cooking.
All right. This is a pretty simple question here. So if you could just answer what class your student is, that would be great. Your oldest student, you might have more. Yeah, so that's great. We got one 2027. That's all right. All right, thanks for that participation. That's wonderful. So we're mostly 2024.
Close to my projections. I said 80%, 87. That was not bad.
Yep. All right. Thanks for that, guys.
Okay, cool. So quickly, for those of you that are new to us, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College Aid Pro. I've been in this little niche world my entire career. So coming dangerously close to 20 years. But to me, that just means I've had a ton of experience and kind of seeing it all, right? I'd be willing to bet there's not a college that you've heard of that I haven't worked with in some capacity. I've seen, obviously, every single family is unique, every student is unique, but I've seen quite the spectrum of scenarios. And I'm sure some of you on here are going, I have the craziest scenario. You don't, okay? We are those are all spoken for already, and hopefully that brings some level of comfort. That's lot of what we're trying to provide here, right? I know even though I haven't lived it and breathed it in the same way that at least half of the people on this call have in terms of sending your kids off to college. I've been on that journey with so many families that I have a massive amount of empathy for the amount of pressure and stress and fear of the unknown that comes with this thing. And that's why I think what we do is incredibly rewarding, and showing people the right way to do this. And there is a right way to do this, no matter who you are, no matter your financial situation, showing families that, so hopefully that they can make great decisions. Their kids get to have these amazing opportunities. Mom and dad get to retire someday, right? And you can enjoy the last year or a couple of years with your kid, right? Instead of just being completely stressed out of your minds with this process, right? That comes with its or inevitable challenges. So quickly, that's me. I think everybody on our team here would kind of shake their heads and say that's about right, right? I think everybody has come wanted to be a part of this thing because they're they feel some version of that. They've experienced some version of that. Peggy is no exception here, right? Again, for those of you that have seen me before, you know what I think about Peggy. It's starting to go to her head a little bit, so I have to pick my spots here, but she is, and she's earned it. She's the fairy godmother of financial aid and scholarships, and I've been a huge fan of hers from afar for many years. Was determined to get her to be a part of this team, just like most of the folks on this call. Similar kind of deal. Finally figured out a way to make that happen, and obviously she has made us better, and you all get the benefit. So, Peggy, if you want to say hi quick, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, same as Matt, I've been doing this. This is what gets me out of bed. I've been doing it for over a decade, and I actually have gone through this process. I have twins and they're out of college, but I've been through it. You'll get through it. And the key thing here is really to be an informed consumer. And the way you do that is by learning. And so being on these webinars is huge, because if you understand how financial aid works and admissions as well, and then you understand where you fit in financial aid, you'll be able to make college affordable much easier. You'll be able to go on college visits and know the questions to ask admissions and to ask financial aid, to kind of cut through some of the marketing and really understand what it means for you. And our software as well does an excellent job of doing that. So kudos for being on here, and I know you will learn a lot tonight. So
yeah, and kind of in that vein, I think Peggy already saw it, but just to double down, this is an unbelievable opportunity to have your questions answered, guys. So ask them. Admissions, financial aid, you can be anonymous if you want. Please put them in the Q&A, because that's kind of where we'll focus, right? You got directors of financial aid on here from University of Oklahoma, MIT, Harvard, right? You have folks that have read, tens of thousands of college essays and applications from that side of the fence that know what these schools are looking for, right? So it's, in my opinion, a very unique opportunity, and you're gonna be hard pressed to stump us kind of as a team here. And we also got a bunch of questions around in terms of like, how do you work with us? What do we charge? Things like this. I promise that's where we're gonna kind of end tonight. And we also have a super unique opportunity, very unique deal that for those of you that have followed along know that we usually do a live kind of a live giveaway or a live deal just for our audiences that show up here. Our CEO Degs likes to call, he always tells me, Carp, you can't do we're going out of business sale every day. But which we're not, but again, I do like to reward those that show up live here. So let's see, let me share my screen. I have 20 decks open, trying to see which one was the latest that you sent me, Peg.
I slacked it to you right before.
I did get it. Hopefully this is the one. We couldn't have been off by much.
Yep, it is.
Okay. Okay, so again, that's here we are. Here's our mission, right? Pretty awesome mission, challenging mission. How do we end the student debt crisis? If somebody on my team could throw this link in the chat, please. So if you haven't already, and I saw that a ton of you did, which is awesome, and it's going to make for a better presentation tonight, or you're going to get more out of it. Create your free CAP account, right? It's going to answer some of the questions that you want to know, just like right out of the gates, Are we eligible for financial aid? How much, at which colleges? Are we going to get scholarships? Same deal. How much, at which colleges? It's going to immediately kind of, I think, set expectations for better, for worse, for where your family lies on this financial aid spectrum. And because one of the biggest challenges is that folks, they make assumptions, right, based on what happened to their neighbor, their coworker, their friends, and that dictates in their mind how generous or not generous a certain school is, right? Or kind of anecdotally, they're thinking, hey, I'm not going to be eligible for financial aid. Don't make assumptions here. Let the technology do the work for you. And that's where you want to start the journey, right? Okay, so for the FAFSA changes, right? There's a couple of good ones here, and I do want to take a second to celebrate them. There's going to be more money for the families that need the most money, right? So families that need the most help, they're getting more resources. Full stop, everybody's psyched about that. The form itself is going to be easier to complete. Okay, so what was 100+ questions is coming down to closer to 36. Okay, so again, these families that have just a really hard time even getting through the forms themselves, it's going to get a heck of a lot easier in theory, right? We'll see once we see this baby live. But in theory, this should be again, the people that need the most help should be able to get it and get more of it and have an easier time navigating the process itself. And there's some other smaller ones in here that are good. Again, 401k contributions are not getting counted against you like they have been in the past. So that's something that's interesting and a strategy to potentially take advantage of. Max those out. You're getting your taxable income down. You're saving for retirement, and it's not hurting you from an EFC standpoint. So that's something that's great. And then those that are receiving child support, it used to be treated as untaxed income and have a really big impact on your financial aid eligibility. Now they're just considering it an asset. And all you need to know is that the impact of receiving child support is going to be way less negatively impactful than it was in the past. So that's, again, I think some things that we can all get behind. And this is just kind of some other points here to support some of the good stuff. Here's the problem, right? For all those benefits, the Department of Education, the federal government is not paying the bill for that. It's going to be some other families, right? And I think, and we kind of think here, 3 different buckets of the population that are essentially going to be funding this additional money that's going to go to these. And that's going to be those that a lot of divorced and separated families, 2-family households, business owners, small business owners specifically, and then those that have more than one child in school at once. Okay. And to touch on each one of those briefly here, it used to be that wherever the student lived with, that's who completed the FAFSA, and that the income and assets in that household dictated the financial aid eligibility or lack thereof for schools that only require the FAFSA. Okay, that's how it was. That's going away. That's irrelevant. Now, the parent or the household that completes the FAFSA is the household that provides the most financial support, right? And the thought process here for the Department of Education is that probably means for most families, that's going to give that family now the higher EFC, eligible for less need-based financial aid eligibility. We're not giving them money, and again, we're gonna take some from that bucket, put it elsewhere.
And actually, the EFC is going to be, I should have put this on the slide, it's going to be called the Student Aid Index. So we got to shift because we're so used to saying the EFC. It's going to be called SAI, so you don't get confused if you see that. Sorry.
Good call. And it is on the other side, Peggy. You did put it on the other side.
Okay.
Again, everybody's going to get the slide deck and recording because I always talk too fast. Tonight, I'm probably going to double down on that just because we do have a whole bunch to cover. And again, kind of limited amount of time here. But it used to be that small business owners didn't have to report any valuation of their business, any assets in their business, nothing. So long as they had less than 100 employees, right? That's going away. Now, even if you're a sole proprietor, you got to put that on the FAFSA. Really going to hurt folks' EFC, SAI and need-based financial aid eligibility. And the sibling discounts going away, right? It used to be that, if you, had more than one kid in school, as you would think, the amount you'd be expected to pay would be divided evenly between the two of them. Now that's going away. So effectively, for a huge percentage of families that have more than one kid in school at once, the cost of college is going to double. So this already really expensive, challenging, thing that we have to navigate here is going to double for those folks. So, and Mike, that's why. So Mike is been at the University of Oklahoma. He's been in this business for over 10 years and has, and you can correct me where I'm wrong here, Mike, but has been in the admissions, been in the financial aid side, but is really a professional that we sought out just based on his experience and based on, I think the different areas within on the college side of the fence, and we want to know what's going on there, right? And Mike sees it and lives it and breathes it every day, but he also, I think, represents what we represent, which is, I want to make this happen for families, right? And he can't control all the rules at the University of Oklahoma, but he can help families navigate it in such a way that maximizes their odds of having success here. But Mike, I'm kind of curious when we look at, and I don't know if you can speak to University of Oklahoma or your peer institutions like that, but what are you guys talking about in terms of, we have twins that are in college right now. Let's say they're freshmen at the University of Oklahoma again, or Oklahoma State, whatever, God forbid, and now all of a sudden they were getting this need-based grant and they're going to get the rug pulled out from underneath them next year. And the, cost of college is going to go way up, even though their income and assets are the exact same. How are you guys talking about this? Do you know how you're going to handle that, or just curious to get your opinion there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're still addressing a lot of the changes for the 23-24 academic year. And so we're looking ahead to that. I really see two kind of buckets of students that fall into this. The students that would have a grant kind of taken away from them, that Pell Grant, without this discount. And then the students that they didn't qualify for a Pell Grant, but they were still mid-range EFC, SAI, where now they're not going to be qualifying for need-based institutional aid, right? And that is where I see the biggest change and challenge, where we could support students and families that qualify based on unmet need and how we evaluate it, even if they don't qualify for grants. And now those families, those students might get bumped out of that. So I think the way to respond is making sure you know who to contact at the university, and then really how to articulate that message. I'm on 2 different scholarship committees at OU, and we see students and families that submit an appeal that are, could have some work done, and we see some that are really well versed, right? They're communicating a really good message. And those people on the scholarship committees, they're humans, right? They see and they understand. And I know from our standpoint, we understand the FAFSA changes and how that's going to impact our students. So knowing how to communicate that to the university, I think is really important. And that's something that I can help with specifically, of how to craft that message, being on the other end of those scholarship appeals to know what that looks like.
No, great call. Thank you. And yeah, listen, it's going to be an interesting year, to say the least, right? And for those of you that you might have heard kind of a concept that you're hearing for the first time here, which is this appeal part of the process where you've got accepted into a college, you've got your award, your financial offer, essentially. Now, is there an opportunity to go back and do better? And that's one of the reasons why we love having folks that are on the college side of the fence. So Mike and Ryan and Josh, to help out. That's one of their sweet spots, because they know, being there, hey, when somebody comes back and asks for more money, how are they crafting that message? Are they doing it in such a way where I can justify adjusting their award and giving them more money, right? There is a method to that madness, something that I think we're really good at as a team. And part of the reason is because we can tap these guys' brains and learn kind of direct from them. Now, they're not going to be able to negotiate against them, or sorry, guys, that's not the word. Sorry, Peg. They're not going to be able to appeal against themselves, right? So if you're trying to go to Harvard, you're not going to be able to work with Ryan. If you're trying to go to MIT, you're not going to be able to work with Josh, right? But obviously they have an understanding of that process, right? And of course, Mike at OU specifically, I don't think would be able to help you there with little conflict of interest. But I mean, Ryan, if you just want to talk about, obviously we talked about this really quickly offline, that there's these massive FAFSA changes that I just kind of highlighted a couple of them. But, and I think a lot of the assumption is, well, this is gonna impact things across the board at every single school in the country because every single school requires the FAFSA. But talk a little bit about what type of impact that's going to have at Harvard's and kind of schools of the like.
Yeah, we just got that question in the Q&A, so that's perfect timing.
Absolutely. So for any parents out there who have children applying to schools that not only require the FAFSA, but also the CSS profile. Again, I can't speak for every school, but to be honest, for these types of schools, for the CSS profile schools, they're not, my understanding is they're not going to opt into that. Their budget is already such that they're set to give that 2-in-school split. All of their peer schools are going to be doing it. So from a competitive standpoint, it wouldn't make sense for them not to. So I wouldn't expect that from the private schools, the ones that are doing the CSS profile at least. But I think more importantly, trying to get this message across from you is when you get your award letter for anything you get, everything's a 1-year proposition, but you as parents and students, you need to look at it as a 4-year proposition. So especially before committing for that May 1st deadline, be sure to connect with the financial aid counselor, find out exactly how they treated it this year and how they might expect it to be treated in subsequent years, because you want to make sure that before committing to one school over another, that package is not only better in year 1, but better across the board for all 4 years.
That's a great call. And I mean, Josh, I imagine, obviously we talked offline earlier this afternoon. I would imagine at MIT, you're similar type of similar deal, right? As Ryan there, but anything to add to what Ryan said?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Ryan said. I think that the point of getting in touch with the school and making sure that you are aware of how they're going to handle it both in your first year and subsequent years is really important. And that's a question that schools are prepared to answer. They are expecting to get that question from a lot of people. So it's going to be something that they're ready to give you a pretty solid answer as to whether or not your award's going to be impacted in future years. But I know that at MIT and all the other schools that I work with or have worked with and I'm aware of, they're planning on continuing the number in college split. So basically the same way they always have. And, as far as business valuations or custodial and divorced parents, they were already looking at all of that information anyway. They were already looking at the business valuations. They were already looking at both the custodial and non-custodial parents. So if they're going to be adding all of that in anyway, then the way the FAFSA is looking at it isn't necessarily going to change the way the schools award their institutions.
It's a great point, right? It's a great point. And again, so even though some of these things are new and will have a significant bearing on schools that, only require the FAFSA, again, a big takeaway here is schools that also require the CSS profile. For the most part, it's that form that dictates your financial aid eligibility or lack thereof. And they were already counting a lot of this stuff. So again, my kind of headline is that there's not a ton of meaningful changes in terms of how these types of schools are going to award money. As Ryan said, he's not speaking for all these institutions. I have a feeling that kind of the next, for lack of a better word here, tier down of private schools after the Harvards and MITs and Stanfords, we're going to see a mixed bag of what they decide to do. Obviously, Josh and Ryan, their resumes kind of speak for themselves, right? We sought them out because I consider them to be kind of the top of the food chain. It's not an accident that they're at MIT and at Harvard. Those guys don't hire just anyone, but we are fortunate to work with a lot of incredibly talented students that apply to those types of colleges. And it's just, we're so fortunate to be able to tap into them and say, hey, here's our situation. How should we present it at schools like yours to maximize our odds, getting the maximum amount of discounts, right? Whether that's how we complete the financial aid applications, whether that's how we appeal, etc. So Josh and Ryan don't work with families with the kind of comprehensive wake me up when it's over packages, right? Again, that doesn't mean we don't access their brains and expertise. We do, but that's not something that they do with us. But you can book an hour with either of them, right? So if you're just looking to book an hour and maybe again, some of these things that you're hearing that sounds like they're in their sweet spot and at those types of schools. And obviously same goes with Mike there, where, for bigger, the bigger, or I should say the state schools and specifically the flagship institutions, incredible resources for you guys, right? And incredible resources for us. Which brings me to my next victim here, Matt Mulhern, Vern, as we call him internally here. I said this to a percentage of our team the other day, but if I was starting a professional financial aid and scholarship team tomorrow and I had the first pick in the draft, I'm drafting myself, of course. But number 2, I'm probably drafting Verno here, right? Which I would hope a lot of people would take exception of that on this call. But Vern has been, with us for a decade plus, worked with hundreds and hundreds of families at least. And I just think is kind of a whiz when it comes to figuring out how do I get the best value for this family based on where they're at, based on the types of schools they're considering, based on the type of student we're working with. I would say, I think Vern would agree with me that his kind of specialties are divorced and separated families or single household families and business owners, right? And not to say he doesn't work with the whole spectrum, he does, but I know these are kind of his sweet spot and his kind of niche within this niche type of deal. But Verno, just talk to us a little bit about where your head's going with this new rule for 2 household families and the business owners.
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt. And you like giving that lead in where you compliment me as the number 2 pick, but obviously that you're the first pick. So yeah, nice job. So in terms of strategy, right? And we've got a lot of questions tonight about divorce separated families. It's not cut and dry, to be honest with you, right? There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of ambiguity behind those rules, even with the changes. So Clark talked about it, but one of the changes is, the custodial parent used to be defined as who does the child spend more time with, right? 51% or more of the time with. That is now moving to who provides more financial support for the child. Quite frankly, both of those are a little ambiguous, right? A little gray area. And what we try to help our clients do is, put them in a situation to maximize the amount of aid that their family receive, right? And if you are in that divorce separated situation, I say about 65% of my clients over the years have been in that situation. Why? Because, you could absolutely take advantage of that, but you have to know how. Also, quite frankly, in those situations, mom and dad might not, be on the best of terms, right? And in terms of sharing information with each other, we basically serve as that neutral third party. Our goal is to get this kid to the best school for the best price, the best value. Let us be that neutral third party. Let us kind of navigate the process for you. So especially in divorce separated situation, there's a lot there. So definitely recommend, at least chatting with one of us on that front. And then small business, right? That's a major change with the FAFSA. I know I saw a comment in here that they're really penalizing small business. You're right. Right, you're right. So a lot of these FAFSA changes are not necessarily designed to help you, but kind of the analogy is how do you do your taxes? There's better ways to present your information than others. And again, that's kind of you can navigate this process strategically, no matter what position you're in, specifically for small business, especially with these changes coming. And we're the best at doing that. And so take us up on our offer and let us help you kind of navigate both of those situations and really kind of any situations that you or your family have.
It's a great call too on having that third party to kind of be, I guess, this firewall, right? Because it's something we say all the time, right? And those of us have been doing this for a while and worked with all sorts of different families and have worked in some really challenging situations where it wasn't amicable, right? And the hardest thing is like, and what who we feel worse for is the kid here, right? The student, right? Your kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds and all the pressure that they are under and how everybody's an overachiever now. And it's just, I think it's so challenging for all of them, but this additional layer of, trying to manage the dynamics of their parents that again are especially just struggling. And this is a struggle for anybody, regardless of kind of what terms you're on. That can be hard, right? We all know that. So anything that we can do to help alleviate that so we can just allow the kid to take care of business and we can be kind of the, the mediator there for some of these conversations. I think there's a ton of value there. And I know, again, we've proven that many times over. Yeah, no, so thank you for flagging that, Verno. Let me see where my, so Jim Jim is someone that I just felt incredibly grateful when I found Jim, and actually right in my backyard here, North Shore, Massachusetts, Jim, right? So the Jim had what we always kind of lacked, or what I personally felt like I lacked, where I know that I can help people nail this college process, right? I know we can get the best deal for college. I know we can figure out the best way to pay for it over 4 years. If we have to borrow, we can figure out the right way to borrow. But I never was an expert in figuring out how is this going to impact the rest of kind of their financial lives. I knew that was a shortcoming that I had, that we had. But any financial advisors or financial planners that I knew and trusted knew nothing about this college piece, which is its own animal. They're completely unrelated. And Jim kind of was a breakthrough there. And now we're fortunate enough to have a couple of gyms, largely through Jim. So, and I also love the fact that Jim, like Peg, like some of the other folks on this call here, a big reason why he wanted to go all in here is because he lived it and breathed it with his kids. So I don't know, Jim, if you just want to layer anything on there, but I guess before I let you do that, the thing that I just wanted to promote is some folks that, as they're in this, are like, I need somebody else to sanity check some of these decisions we're making and make sure that it's okay with the rest of my more comprehensive financial life beyond the road here. And we've got great resources on our team that's their sweet spot as well, with Jim being one of them.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Little bit of background. I've been in the financial services industry for 32 years, which is scary to say, but it is in fact the case.
It looks it, Jim. It looks it. It's not, that's what I was gonna guess about. Yeah.
I've spent the majority of my career working with individuals providing independent, fee-only financial planning and investment advisory services, serving as a fiduciary for my clients. Back when my daughter was a junior in high school, like a lot of families, we were ill prepared at the time. So we ended up hiring a college planner to help us through the process. And after working with them for a short period of time, it became clear to me pretty quickly that I had a lot of clients and friends and just people I knew in the community that could benefit from this service as well. So at that point, I decided to jump right in, and that was 15 years ago. So I've been doing this for a long time and really enjoy working with parents, sort of helping them through this process. Many parents will use this point in time where they're facing college for the very first time as an opportunity to really do some longer term financial planning. Obviously you're going to be faced with some major decisions along the way that can both hurt you and help you. So I think that's where John Munley and I can really add some value to those folks that are looking to use this as an opportunity to do some longer term planning. And, a couple of the areas that we focus on is, we'll typically do a full investment review. So, we want to make sure that your 401ks, your IRAs, your brokerage accounts, your 529 plans are all properly allocated, taking unnecessary risk. We'll do a fee analysis, again, to make sure that you're not paying any unnecessary fees, because every dollar that we can save you in fees is another dollar that you can earmark towards college. Tax planning is obviously always important, but even more so during the college years. You have to be careful with distributions from retirement accounts, with interest and dividends and capital gains. All those things can have a negative impact on your financial aid situation. So you want to be fully aware before you make any of those decisions. And then obviously borrowing, right? Most families are going to be faced with borrowing at some point during this process. And you just want to make sure that you have a plan in place where you're going to be able to handle that debt. So I always recommend to folks, for those of you that have a relationship with a trusted advisor, whether it's a CPA, a CFP, a financial advisor, you want to reach out to them now and start this process. And if you don't have a relationship with an advisor, or your current advisor can't help you through this important exercise, you should definitely reach out and we should talk.
Yeah, and for me, thanks to is the big takeaway here is like, and again, I think what we've done a better job of by having the gyms of the world as a part of our team. And just make sure we're not looking at this thing in a vacuum. Obviously, everybody's focused on what's 6 inches in front of their face, and you should be, and you don't really have a choice, right? And it's just like, how do I get my kid into these schools? And we'll kind of figure it out. But like, that's a little bit of a dangerous sentence, right? We'll figure it out. We've always kind of said, like, internally, we don't want to just go in with that attitude. So anyways, we're lucky to have some additional resources that can help us with those longer term deals here, right? So okay, so let's shift gears here and talk about some things on the admission side. And Brian specifically, so Brian Ford has been somebody that I've collaborated with in different ways for a decade plus, probably finally figured out how to get them kind of fully as a part of this team, which is phenomenal. I've always tapped him again for many years. Maybe it's I don't even know how many years, but anyways, Brian to me is really unique, and in the sense that he's been on kind of every side of this admissions fence, right? He's been admissions director at a bunch of different colleges. I think most recently at Boston University here in our backyard. He's been in the private side, working with families, working with students, and then has been a school counselor at some of the more prestigious private high schools here in the Boston area. So again, he's been on every side of the table, which again, as we kind of tap people to be able to say what's going on and what are the folks in your network saying, he's just been a huge resource. And I think maybe the statistic that I really kind of get drawn to for him is like, he's read 60,000 applications, over 60,000 applications and essays. So it's like, he knows what's helping and what's hurting there. So it's just unbelievable that he can guide families, again, hands-on through that part of the process. And then the other one, and this is something that we bother with him with extremely frequently, is we say, Brian, here's the SAT and ACT scores. Here's the list of colleges. Where are we sending? Right. And he's like a calculator there. And that's an incredibly important decision. So that could make or break your admissions decision. It could have a huge impact on your scholarships, need-based financial aid eligibility. So Brian, if you want to take a few minutes, I know I'm asking you a lot here to rip through a couple slides and these very important decisions. So we go early decision or not, Brian? Tell us in 5 minutes.
Yeah. So first off, I'll say if you want to have a larger conversation, we've had some great questions already, not only about test optional, about deadlines, conversations that we have with our families. Had some with some of our Wake Me Up clients earlier today, talking about early decision, and really I said it in one of the answers that I gave, is that the common strategy of good college counseling is that there is no common strategy. And so when you're working with families surrounding making decisions about deadlines and then making decisions about the test optional waive, is it really needs to be school specific, and working through your lists and finding that nuance depending on how a school operates, how they look to fill their class. And kind of the slide we're looking at is what you're seeing is a huge trend in college admissions, is particularly in the top schools, but really schools all throughout are finding ways to enroll kids earlier and earlier, and also look to fill their classes earlier. And so if you look at the list of schools down the left, on the left-hand side is kind of their average admit rate overall. But then you're seeing comparable to some of their early round acceptance rates in the past few years. And sometimes it's 3 times the rate. And so what we're seeing is more students are applying earlier. A lot of this is due to the test optional movement. We've done full webinars on that, but I'll try to do my best in 30 seconds. Essentially, test optional means you are not required to send your test scores to schools. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a free pass, go and apply everywhere. But what it does mean is that it's provided more access. And I think that's the big difference, is test optional provides more access. It doesn't necessarily apply or provide more admission to schools. And so we work with students very well to look at what individual schools they think they should be sending their scores to and which ones they shouldn't. I'd say the vast majority of school students that I work with, 98, 99%, there is a mixture within their balanced college list that we help them build of where they're going to send scores and where they're not going to. It's only those students on those very high degrees of either really high performing on that test or just maybe not a good fit for the SAT or ACT that we're not going to send those scores. These are some other just kind of off the top global admission trends that we're seeing. Those admission rate at those top schools continue to drop. And a lot of that, again, is due to more students applying within test optional policies. All 8 Ivy Leagues test optional. Close to 90% of the US New England World top 50 will be test optional for 23-24. But it doesn't mean that they're admitting more students. They have the same amount of beds in their residence halls, and we can't have people sleeping on the streets. And so more apps doesn't necessarily mean more accepts. Test optional, that number is even updated. We're close to 2,000 schools will have some type of test optional policy for next year. And then as we're saying, we're seeing more early decision and early action applications. And if I'm working with a student who is thinking about applying test optional, particularly to a highly selective school, we're going to start to encourage early decision and early action, because at least historically what we've seen is we've been able to get more kids in that way. Now, that being said, those still have to be the right fit financially for those families. And so we'll also have that conversation. And one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with College Aid Pro is I think we do a really good job of balancing both of those sides. We look and find the right academic fit, but we make sure we're not putting you in a financial hole either. And so we're just seeing large acceptance rates, people applying earlier. I never tell a family I'm going to make this process stress-free. What I say is we're going to work really hard to help you build a really solid, balanced college list. Work on your essays, whether that be your personal essay or your supplemental essays. We have students right now in the Wake Me Up, they're doing personal essay. I had a great conversation with a rising senior this year about her essay just a couple hours ago. And then we'll start talking about deadlines and things like whether we're going to apply test optional. So it's a very exciting time. It's definitely the time to get started on your applications now, because as deadlines creep closer to October 1st and October 15th, and November 1st is really the norm, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 3 years we're saying October 15th is the norm. Then we're definitely going to be looking kind of forward. So.
No, thanks, Brian. And that was a great job. A tall task to get kind of some of that stuff in there in a few minutes.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question,
Yeah.
because and I was answering questions, so I wasn't totally listening. On the slide before, are those stats ED and EA when you say?
Yeah, so it's mixed. And
Okay,
it's also
that's what I
important to
thought,
know,
yeah.
for some of
Yeah.
those schools, they only have early decision. So it can be school
so-
specific, but it encompasses any of their early admission policies.
Okay, that's for Ann there.
Just a couple things I'd like to hover over here. I mean, one of them is that, and I think it's a really important statistic that, again, for me doing this for such a long time, I was kind of shocked to experience this over the last few years and working closer with Brian, and he said about 98% of students that he works with, when they say, do you go test optional or do you send your test scores? The answer to that question is both, right? It depends on the school. And so if they're applying to 10 schools, he's going to advise, send them to these 6, don't send them to these 4. And for those where he says, we're not sending them anywhere or we're sending them everywhere, those are the exceptions. So that's incredibly interesting, because I think the common thought is, do we send test scores or do we not, right? And that should not be how we're looking at it, right? Should not be how you're looking at it. You should be looking at the particular college. Are we sending them to this particular school or not? So I think that's really important. Early decision, I think we're more or less aligned as a team here. Everybody has their individual opinions, but I think everybody would be, in agreement from a high level of my basic talk track is that I say, listen, if you're going to go early decision, and just very quickly, early decision means if you're accepted into that college, you're obligated to attend that college. So we can only apply early decision to one school. Okay. We need to check 2 boxes with lots of confidence. Number one, it just has to be that your student, your kid, or you as the student, this is the dream school. Like, this is where I want to go. I have to be here. I'm one of those few that kind of had this epiphany, right? This is where I need to be. There's no doubt this is where you want to go. That's one, which I would say is rare. That's the exception rather than the rule. The second one is you as the parent have to have a really good idea of what this school is actually going to cost you. Okay, once you are accepted, you have to know, am I getting aid? Am I getting scholarships? Or am I paying full sticker price? And you have to be okay with that, right? If there's any hesitation in either of those, it's probably not, early decisions probably not the right thing to do. And people like Brian, have to sign off on this too. He has to sign as the school counselor, right? To say, hey, as far as I know, if this kid is accepted, he's going there. right? He's not going to renege on this contract. So it's an important decision there. And then the last one is, and again, we're just a few minutes before we kind of flesh out some details around this, but one of the great things I think about working with our team is that you have this admissions and financial aid combination if you want it. So there's a 2-for-1 element, right? And I look at it as like Brian and Dan, you know, they got to whip the kids, right? If you're sick of telling your kids, have you started your essay yet? Do you know when your deadlines are? Have you got your teacher recommendations? Let them manage that, right? On the financial aid side of the puzzle, we're more whipping the parents to say, hey guys, let's go. We need your tax returns. We've got to do the FAFSA. Here come the deadlines, whatever. But you know, I think there's something to be said for that. Two people, kind of a 2-for-1 deal, holding everybody accountable. There are a few unicorns in this country. Dan Bizig is one of them, where he is an IEC and admissions expert that's been doing it for 20 years, as well as a financial aid expert. You don't get a lot of these. And again, those unicorns, I love them. I need them on my team. So as we call him internally, Ted Lasso, otherwise known as Dan Bizig. But Dan, do you want to take a couple minutes? I'm probably going to have to rush you too, buddy. So you're on.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So you know what, folks, the key with this is that the work that we do, that Brian and I do, and also other admissions experts within the team, is really to guide students through the admissions process. You know, there's specific do's and don'ts. I mean, things that we want to make sure that you don't make the mistake. In other words, we're trying to help students put their very best foot forward for both the admissions and scholarship committees, so that at the end of the day, we want those colleges to say, yes, we'd absolutely love to have you. And that's really identifying colleges that are the right fit. Back to what they've already been talking about, the keys with this. And you know what? It all starts with the application process. I mean, it really does come down to understanding that over 1,000 colleges out there are using the Common App. And, you know, by using that, you're getting the ability to put all the facts in there, but we want to make sure that those facts are accurate, that they really do give the best story possible about the students, so that they're going to be in a great position to really apply to the schools and get into it. So from an admission standpoint, we're here for you. In particular, we're here for you if you're not already working with somebody. I mean, that's the best part about our approach to things, is that we're trying to fill the gaps and really help our families out with the completion of the financial aid forms on the one side, and in this case, the common application, to make sure that you really get everything done. And then when it comes to this essay, which is the next slide here, you know, there are important lessons to understand about this. Do they matter? You better believe it. Whatever you bring up the term test optional, you have to know that that means that they're going to look at that application and do a holistic review of everything. It's going to include the essay. It's going to include the rigor of the coursework that's been taken. It's going to include the letters of recommendation, the extracurricular activities. I mean, it's the whole package that comes into play. And that's why I believe with our guidance, we can really help to really position students to have the best chance of getting admitted and getting scholarships for all the right reasons.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, like impossible to you know, cover too much in just a couple minutes on a couple slides here, but thanks. And hopefully that some of those messages were helpful here. A couple other people that I want to point out just real quickly here is, so I think what is less glamorous, right? But again, a lot of us that are kind of on the front lines interfacing with you all and working with your students and working with you as parents and providing this education and the whole deal, is that a core part of what allows us to be successful is our data, right? When we're saying you're going to get a scholarship at this school for $25,000, right? How can you trust that? Or we are going to get need-based financial aid here, you know, and it was different than the net price calculator said on the college's financial aid website. But you guys should feel really, really good at any of the projections that we're making. We'll never be perfect, right? There's a subjective element in this process. Until that changes, we're never going to be perfect, but we are all over this. Okay. There's a couple different things that go into our algorithm for these projections. And the ultimate scoreboard is that when families actually get accepted and upload these financial aid offers at these schools, we know how we did. How do we project? How do we say we were going to do? How do we actually do? And that feedback loop informs projections moving forward. Now, schools make changes every year, right? Obviously, there's outside of this year, there's usually not incredibly drastic changes, but things change. And we have a technology, and as promised, Justin, I have no idea what it's called, but I think it's cool what it does, where we monitor every college's website in the country, both their financial aid website and their scholarship website. So if there are any changes that gets made, we also get alerted, right? Because that's another way that we test how these schools are actually giving money or not giving money, is using their net price calculators, making sure that we are scraping their websites for anything that, again, informs our projections. On any given day, you're going to have 4 people that are working on this. And again, I brought Justin on tonight because he's a handsome devil, and I wanted to show him off. Or sometimes you data guys, Justin, get a bad reputation. I don't know why. But I don't know. Why don't you talk a little bit about why you feel pretty good about what we're doing in terms of making these projections, and anything that I whiffed on in terms of how we're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the compliment. I figured that's why you brought me on tonight. We get asked pretty often, what are our data sources? And it's a little tricky question, because it's basically anywhere that is a trusted source. And I think that's what makes it so reliable, is we bring in data from everywhere, between paid data sets, Department of Education, manually scraping websites like Carp talks about. He loves it. I hate it because I get the email notifications every time a website changes, which drives me crazy. But the answer is basically everywhere. So wherever we can find trusted information. And then he talked about the constant feedback loop as well. Literally stole it right off of my notes, but that's really what brings it all together. And we've got everyone that's on this call, whether it's IECs, advisors, the CAP team, families, students themselves, that we're not going to be perfect, but every time, we get questions or feedback, we're able to adjust it and make these in real time. And then in the final stages of it, we've got the huge database full of actual award letters, where we're able to take a look at it and find either what we missed, what we were incorrect on, or pat ourselves on the back when we get our projections right. But it's basically just anywhere that's a trusted source, we're able to kind of put it in and get it in quickly and make these projections as accurate as possible.
Trust the data. Appreciate your work, Justin. But yeah, I just again, there's some, and it's not just Justin. He represents his team that he works with tonight. I plucked him. But again, that's a huge part of what we do. So you should feel really good about what you're seeing there. If you see anything that feels off, write into us right away. That will get, our support team is going to take that, bring it to Justin and his team, and he's going to look at it that day, right? Within business hours, we're going to be all over that. That is one of the biggest parts of their job description, right? Is like, if somebody sees something, this doesn't look right. This is a university right down the street from me. Your projection seems wonky. We love that. Bring us the feedback, and we're all over it. And just really quickly on that front, our support team, I think, is something that makes us, again, very, very unique. When you write in with the question, or if you're a family that decides to hire us for the Wake Me Up When It's Over package, you might interface with Lisa or Jackie is not here tonight, but those are a couple of the gals that we're fortunate enough to have a part of our team. We have Anne Marie and Kathy representing 2 of our 3. We call them the Greenville Mafia Gang, down there in South Carolina, because you can see they're a pretty intimidating pair. But and a huge part of why they're with us is because they, again, live this and breathe this with their kids, and are still living it with their kids, and kind of come to find us in these unique ways. And I think, I don't want to give us too much credit, but said, oh my goodness, that's what I needed. That's what I need. I've been through it. I want to be a part of this team. So if either of you gals have anything to add quick, or you just want to wave and say, hello, I'm Kathy, I'm Anne Marie, and that's who you're going to see if you write into for support, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm just going to say real quick. Sorry, Anne Marie, I can't see your face. Nope. I just want to say that I have a junior in college. I did not know about CAP when I was going through this. I am not a professional in the financial aid services. I've been a mom for 20 years, and being on the side of a parent and finding out all of the things that we had to go through, all of y'all's questions that you're asking tonight. I sat through this and didn't know what a FAFSA or a CSS profile or an EFC or how to talk about financial aid or figure these things out. And if I had had CAP when I was going through this, and could have paid the prices that we charge to have someone hold my hand and talk my kid off of a ledge and make our senior year enjoyable, I would have happily said, please help me. So we've got a great team here that's ready to help you. And Anne Marie, whatever you got to add too.
I was just going to say I have twins that have just finished their first year. So I do know very well the feeling you have right now as you're trying to walk into this process and how overwhelming it can be. So just take a deep breath and know you have an all-star team in front of you here answering these questions like they do and so knowledgeable. So I can just say on this side of the thing, and also having a high schooler, you can't have a better team behind you and helping your kids.
Well, thank you, gals. I appreciate that. And we're grateful to have you. Believe me, you're a big part of, I think, what makes us good at what we do, right? And that's kind of the point here. We got the team, which brings me to the only one on the team that we haven't heard from, which is kind of like, par for the course here. And probably, so there's 12 of us. We got 12 of us on here. And probably if you polled all 12 of us secretly and said, who's the most valuable person on this call tonight, it'll probably be the same answer from everybody. Jara Barrett, right? Jara is kind of like so much of the glue of our company, does everything. You may or may not interface with her along this process, but I promise you, she knows who you are. She's helping you, whether, again, you get to know it or not. And at a minimum, whoever is helping you is Jara supporting them, right? And Jara supporting all of us. So we're incredibly lucky to have her. And again, both with Jara and Kathy and Anne Marie, I just love this isn't the point of tonight, but if any of you were those stories of Anne Marie and Kathy were resonating with you, that's interesting. Talk to us, right? Write in and tell us. I mean, that's kind of how our relationship started with Kathy and Anne Marie. Jara was an intern. She went to Endicott College right down the street here in Beverly, Mass. We were lucky enough to have her then. We wouldn't let her get away. We never will if I have it my way. But again, if there's any students on here and this kind of what we do resonates with you, talk to us. We might want to work with you. We might want to help you or whatever. But again, that's kind of how it started, where Jara was going through the middle of this. She was hands-on with her family. That was kind of, she's always been wise beyond her years. So even as a 21-year-old, she was all over this stuff. So when she found out we kind of existed, she said, I need to be a part of that because I'm living it and breathing it. And again, she's been a huge part of how we've accelerated and continues to be. So anyways, without further ado here, I want to talk about, I do want to spend a couple minutes of how you can work with us moving forward and specifically what I'm recommending tonight, because again, we're going up in prices on this Saturday, okay? And it's going to continue to go up through the season for class 2024. And we have a $500 off discount that we're doing just tonight, okay? And I'll talk about exactly what that is in a second here, but effectively that's $750 off between that and the price increase that goes into effect on. And Peggy, if you could put, or somebody put this link in the chat if you have it. If you don't worry about it. But there's 3 different ways that families work with us and what we call our wake me up when it's over capacity, right? One of them is just for financial aid help. So you work one-on-one with with Jim or with Vern or with myself or with Dan, right? And we just do that piece for you, right? We're doing the FAFSAs, we're doing the CSS profiles, we're making sure you're presenting your scenario to these colleges in such a way that you're going to qualify for the maximum amount of aid, if it's possible. For some folks, we can't wave a magic wand. We're not going to get need-based financial aid. We can still provide value, but it might not be via need-based financial aid. We're going to help identify the colleges that are going to give you the best deals, the ones that compete with one another, right? We're going to be on the front lines guiding you through that appeal process. So again, whether you're working with Ryan Callahan or Josh or Mike directly, or we're tapping into each other's experience as a team to make sure that we're presenting as such a situation that the school's going to come back and give you some more money, right? And then finally, obviously, how are we going to pay for this thing, right? How are we going to do it for all 4 years between all the kids? If we have to borrow, how do we get that right? What's too much to borrow? What's too much for our kids to borrow? So that's that piece. So if you're just somebody that's like, I can't, this is too much, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the time, whatever, this link I think should be in the chat, right? Use this coupon code 500 off. It expires at midnight tonight, right? So if you're just like, I just need financial aid help, that's you, right? And obviously, and specifically 2 household families, divorced or separated families, that's you. If you're just someone who says, I don't care about financial aid stuff, I just need help with admissions, this is where you could work with Brian, or you can work with Dan, and specifically have your kid work with Dan for that whole piece. How are we going to find the list of schools that's right for our kid, for our family? This essay is incredibly important. It really is, even more so with test optional, right? Even more so with all these applications. Brian will tell you all the time the same thing that Dan told you. This is how kids separate themselves. We're looking at these same GPA, same test scores. The essay is the human being, right? That's where the kid comes through here. You have to nail that, right? And then obviously navigating these applications themselves. Let Dan and Brian nag your kids, right? Let them nag your kids so they can keep them accountable. And then these interviews are more important now, right? These interviews, again, are kind of supplemental to the essays. There's a way that we can maximize our odds of success there. So that's that piece. The biggest value, where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And I know this isn't, for a percentage of you, these price points are not something that you can even consider. And we will continue to support you, right? We have our free resources that you see on our website here, right? If you just want to book an hour with anybody, that is again, you have that option. But we're starting to fill up the roster for these types of things for this year. And so that's why there's some urgency. And again, we're discounting it as steeply as you'll see here, which you won't see again.
Hey, Carpy, can you just speak to multiples who want the package, how you handle that with the pricing?
Yeah, it's $500 more for these. Truth be told, we haven't decided what we're doing for these. So how we're handling that for tonight, Jer and I talked about this today. So real life case study. If you wanted to commit and get in at the deal at the price point, you just buy one tonight. It's going to be an additional $500 for the financial aid piece. We haven't decided what it's going to be for the admissions or the combo piece yet. Obviously, if you decide that and again, what I think it will be is an additional $1,000 here in all likelihood. If you decide you couldn't commit to that, you know, no problem. Obviously, we'll give you a full refund and no harm, no foul. But how it's going to work is we're going to say buy it for the one tonight, okay? And then we're going to invoice you for an additional $500 tomorrow. Kind of on that note, probably for a percentage of you, you're like, this is great, this is awesome, but I just met these guys. Am I really going to pull out my credit card right now and spend, you know, between $2,500 and $4,500? That seems crazy. It's not, okay. It's not crazy, even if it feels that way. But what I'll tell you is this: if you're like, but I'm probably going to do this, I probably should do this. It just feels, you know, a little bit intimidating doing it this quickly. Almost feels like an impulse buy. If it's, again, if you just met us an hour ago, buy it tonight to get that discount, to lock it in. And then you can just write into support, hey, I bought it tonight, but I just want to sanity check this a little bit. Can I talk to somebody tomorrow or later this week just to ask any other particular questions that I might have? Or maybe I'm thinking I want to work with Dan, but I want to talk to him one-on-one so he learns a little bit more about my family. Absolutely. Just buy it tonight. You'll have that, you know, our support team, Anne Marie and Kathy, will get you to whomever to ask any particular questions you have. And if Dan, if you freak them out, then, you know, again, they can get out of that, you know, no harm, no foul. Right. And this, obviously this combo package, I kind of teased it earlier. This is the best value, right? I mean, if you have these, you know, as a standalone aside, that's $7,000. Before the price increase, you know, we do it for $4,500 tonight, where you're either working with Brian and then one of our financial aid experts, right? Both of us handling both of those pieces that are directly in our lane, or Dan, that again is one of the unicorns out there that can handle both, right? That can manage your student and is an expert in the whole admissions piece, along with the financial aid piece. So, you know, and again, it's something that we basically call it's two birds with one stone, right? So obviously we're trying to thread the needle here. I need to find the right fit for my kid, culturally, geographically, academically, that whole deal. but then the price has to be right too. And it's just maximizing your odds of doing that successfully. It's not lost on me that, again, this is a massive investment. The last thing you want to think about right now is spending money. You're going to get a return on this investment. Okay. This is what you're going to thank yourself for 9 months from now when your kid's going off to college, getting ready to move into the dorm. And, you know, and you're able to look back and say, that was good job. Good job. You
Well,
kinda-
and regardless of the age of your child, Vern just answered the question, but I'll just say it out loud because others are probably thinking, if you have a rising sophomore, if you have a rising junior, basically we'll take care of you until you're waving goodbye. You know, you're driving away, looking at your kid in the rearview mirror. I remember those days, and you're leaving them at the dorm, right, when they're freshmen. So we'll take care of you through the whole process. It doesn't expire after 12 months or something.
That's right. And the only thing I'll add to that, for underclassmen, you will not get this price increase on July 1st and then August and September and October, right? We only do this with the senior class, so the class 2024, because again, as we get closer to these due dates, we have to do more internally quicker. And it's just, quite frankly, more challenging for us to accommodate the closer we get to these due dates. So if you're class 2025 or 26, you won't have that price increase until this time next year, right? Or 2 years if you're class 2026. But, you know, again, take advantage of the $500 off coupon code. And again, you're locked in at that, and you're just going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to have access to us for longer. If it's the combo side of the fence, right? I know that's where Brian and Dan will be looking at your kids' transcripts to say, hey, what classes should you be taking or not be taking to make sure that we're kind of maximizing our odds of hitting the targets we want to hit from an admission standpoint. Yeah. And the question is, what if I buy this, just the financial aid deal tonight? Could I upgrade down the road? The answer is yes, right? You could. I guess we didn't talk through this one, Jared, in terms of exactly what we do there. We'd figure it out. What we'd probably ask you is to say, if you're on the fence about that and you wanted to start tonight with just the financial aid piece, do it. And if you wanted to upgrade, you know, we would probably just have to do it in a pretty short time horizon if you wanted to take advantage of the same price point. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like excellent job, team. It looks like we had 94 questions answered, and that doesn't even include the chat. So pretty stinking good. Excellent work, everybody. But yeah, listen, hopefully you guys learned some things. We provided some value. It's a big challenge, and I will be curious to get everybody's feedback to the extent you're willing to share. Those of you that are showing up as parents and as students tonight, because we're trying to figure out of how much is too much, because we know the big questions are FAFSA changes, ED, not ED, test optional. What should I be thinking about for the applications and essay? It's hard to do in one night. So I hope we provided at least some value in each of those categories, and also articulated how you can work with us. Again, I know I'm selling you hard here, but it's because I believe so firmly in what we do. And I believe so, I just know in my guts, and I just have seen enough evidence over the years that the odds of us being able to, again, show you a tangible return on that investment, along with just making this whole process easier to navigate from just a psychological, kind of the intangible component. That's what we're good at. That's what we do. And again, hopefully it gave you guys an idea. A huge part of why we're successful is to be able to lean on one another, right? And all the time say, hey, here's the list my kids are looking at, right? Even if I've been doing this forever, here's the schools I'm recommending. What am I missing here, right? What do you think, Vern? What do you think, Brian? What do you think, Dan? What do you think, Ryan? Right? This is what we do internally every single day. Yeah, so let me just answer this one. Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful, guys. Again, it's a big leap. You'll thank yourself. And even if you're like, I know I want to do this, but I'm like, this is crazy without talking to someone one-on-one, buy it tonight, take advantage of the discount. We'll talk to you to write in to say, I want to talk to somebody, right? We will facilitate that tomorrow. You do a sanity check, or maybe your partner couldn't be here tonight. Maybe you are divorced. are separated, you need to talk to, you know, your ex to get them on board here. Do it tonight. And again, we'll facilitate that conversation. And if you say, you know what, that did feel like an impulse buy. This doesn't feel right. Dan freaked me out. My ex is refusing to do it. We'll get you refunded, no questions asked, no sweat. But yeah, you'll thank yourself. I feel incredibly confident. I guess Cap team, I mean, do we anything that anybody has to add? I appreciate everybody's contributions tonight. I mean, this was a first for us. I thought you guys all nailed your respective parts here. We'll huddle as a team and think about what everybody else's opinion was of this thing. But
yeah, hey Carp, can you clarify again that if there's multiples or there's two kids that are buying?
Yeah, so
buying for two kids.
Right. Let's start with twins, because multiples, if it's 2 years later, we're just treating it like a different kid, right? So if you have a senior and a sophomore, usually, I mean, bug us a little bit. We'll probably find a way to get you a little deeper of a discount 2 years from now. But basically, if you have kids that are not multiples or not in the same class, you know, it's you're buying individual packages, okay? But for twins, it's going to be $500 additional for just the financial aid package. Okay. And plan on $1,000 additional for the admissions or the combo. Again, that's not set in stone, but either way tonight for multiples, you got to buy the package, and then we're going to add 500 more on here tomorrow and kind of TBD on this one. And again, obviously you're not beholden to following through on that. If, you know, there's not going to be a bait and switch there. It's going to be something very close to, if not exactly what I just spelled out for you there. So I guess we'll kind of do, and obviously my team, thank you for staying 12 minutes past plus. Feel free to dip out whenever. And again, awesome job as always. I'm very grateful and lucky to have you. Thanks for putting up with my voice again, as always.
Hey, Carp, I'm going to drop our Facebook group into the chat.
Okay. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, and just my parting thoughts, and I say this on all of our webinars. One, stay tuned in our community, because we do webinars through every step of this journey. We know the journey you're on. We know where it gets hard. So stay tuned, watch our emails, watch the invites. Remember what I said at the beginning, if you're an informed consumer, you're so far ahead of the game. But do something. If it's accessing all of our free resources, if it's buying our most expensive package, or anything in between, do something. I know it's hard and I know it's overwhelming, but don't bury your head in the sand, because it's going to rear its ugly head at some point. And I've just dealt with so many parents that do that, and then they're bummed, they're ashamed, they're embarrassed, and you just don't want to go there, right? You wanna keep your head above this. It's just it's very important. And if it's too much, then let us guide you, right? Let us guide you however it's going to support you.
Yeah, 100%. And then Nicole, I know you're looking for the link. I think we put it in the chat again there. I can put it again right now. Yeah, it's a great point, Peg, right? Like, again, this is not where we're going up in price here is just not for every family. And you can self-identify percentage. You say that's just not anything to think about, talk about, whatever, no problem. We're not going anywhere, right? We're not leaving anybody behind either. So I think that's an important message. But yeah, otherwise, got till midnight tonight, guys. Do the right thing.